I'm going to keep this intro short because look at that runtime, man. Recently, I had the opportunity to interview the folks behind Half-Life 2 RTX, an RTX remix project, aka Orbifold Studios, and I asked you guys to send me your most pressing questions. I then compiled the best questions into a neat list that I then subsequently asked the team to answer for me, and these are their answers. So sit tight, grab a drink and a snack, and enjoy this Lambda Generation exclusive interview. Roll the video!
Lambda Generation.
Alright, so tonight I'm sitting down with the guys from Orbifold Studios and Nyle from Nvidia. Say hi, everyone.
Hey guys.
Hey folks. Everyone. Hey Lambda Gen.
So you guys are developing a pretty cool project. It's called Half-Life 2 RTX, an RTX remix project. We're gonna talk about that tonight. So I think we should start first with kind of an introduction of everyone.
Everyone, I'm Kralich, real name David. I'm one of the co-leads on Half-Life 2 RTX and been around source modding for a while now. My main source project is Raising the Bar Redux, which is a cut content Half-Life 2 mod. Other than that, I've worked on Portal Prelude RTX, which was the first modder-led RTX remix project after Portal RTX.
Hi, I'm MDDBULLDOGG, real name Chris. Co-lead here with Kralich, Worm, John Freeman, who could not be here today, unfortunately. Been around for quite a while in the source modding community on all sorts of projects, most recently Project 17 and Half-Life 2 Remade Assets. Very excited to finally be able to call ourselves Orbifold Studios and speak about what we're working on here today.
Hey everyone, I'm WormSlayer. I've been modding stuff since the olden days of Quake, and most recently I was the project lead on Half-Life 2 VR mod.
Hey guys, my name's Nyle. I'm the product manager for RTX Remix, and I was also the product manager for Portal RTX. Huge fan of Valve games and excited to talk about Half-Life 2 RTX with you all today.
I got a bunch of questions here for you guys from our lovely community who want to know a whole lot more about this project, of course. So let's go and answer them. So I got my first question here from @Speedtra. How would you describe the Half-Life 2 RTX team's design philosophy when working on this project?
Half-Life 2 RTX is one of those projects where we really want to remaster the experience. We all have this perfect image of Half-Life 2 in our heads from the first time we played it. We want to remaster this so that you're feeling what you felt the first time you played Half-Life 2. Fresh, new, exciting, pretty lights, awesome physics, the works. And I'm really hoping we can hit that nail on the head and show that to all the other people who might have otherwise passed up Half-Life 2 because it wasn't the prettiest game around.
We got another question here from a Scavman, and they ask, how extensive is the graphical upgrade? Will you be remaking some polygonal shapes or just updating lighting, reflections, and textures?
So the goal is to redo all textures, assets, and character models in the game. Every asset will be upgraded not only with more polygonal detail to get more geometry in there, but also we are moving the texture resolution up to 2K and 4K, particularly for world materials, which will all be 4K. And we are going to be utilizing PBR features added by RTX Remix so that we can have realistic lighting and realistic materials. This is for metalness, roughness, normal mats, and emissive masks, which are basically parts of the texture that give off light. We're also looking into redoing certain animations that will feel more at home in a modern-looking remaster, but will still be faithful to the original reference material. A recent feature added to RTX Remix, which we are utilizing already, is parallax occlusion mapping. If you think of the brick walls in Half-Life 2 and how they're largely flat, thanks to parallax occlusion mapping, you will be able to see the bricks jut out. You'll be able to see the cracks between them, the cement, and all the irregularities introduced to add variety to world textures across the board. And thanks to the RTX Remix path tracing renderer, this parallax occlusion mapping will cause these walls to actually self-shadow, to cast shadows on themselves depending on the direction of the light source.
To add on to David's answer here, you can also expect some map edits coming in. Not so much map edits to change gameplay or update the gameplay or anything like that. For example, WormSlayer's Half-Life 2 VR project made a lot of the same edits that we're looking to add in Remix. One good example is right at the beginning of the Street Wars chapter. When you revisit the plaza, there's a crashed sky bridge. It's been knocked over and isn't connected to both buildings anymore. Came in there, added geometry to that. You can see through the windows. It really just made it make more sense and be more realistic. Not only does that just add more detail to the environment, but it also allows light to propagate more realistically through those windows. So you can have an instance where a fire indoors in a building somewhere will be casting actual light and casting through those windows and all the shadows that you would expect to see from that in real life.
As well as remastering all of the graphical content, we're also going to be doing a bit of remastering to the audio, not the music, but the sound effects. Some of them were not of the highest quality back in 2004, so we're going to be, giving them a bit of a glow up. If anybody's played the Half-Life 2 VR mod, you will have already heard some work in that direction by the same people who we have on board for this project.
And actually, the song in the first trailer, I think, features some of the work of one of the audio producers who signed on to help out this project.
One of the very first lines you hear in the game from G-Man in his opening speech just has the crunchiest bitrate. It is just so low.
Rise and shine, Mr. Freeman. Rise and shine.
It pulls you out of it every time you hear it. The last thing we want is to have everything else be perfect, awesome path tracing, sun rays, all this fun stuff, and you hear a really crunchy sound that just takes you out of the experience.
All right, so I got another question here from EdRevenant50, and they are asking, what is Nvidia doing in this remaster exactly? Is it 90% Nvidia Lightspeed Studios and 10% community? What are the ratios?
First and foremost, this is a community remaster, led by modders 99%. Oberfold Studios, our development team, is completely composed of modders and interested creators from the community, working on a hobbyist basis. The core of the team is built from the 4 teams of Project 17, Remade Assets, RTBR, and Half-Life 2 VR. And all 4 projects have a lot of talented creators on them who have experience shipping content before. Our collaboration with Nvidia is purely there to help us wherever we need it, whilst using the tool. They're providing a really solid backbone and providing us a lot of technical support with all the new features that Remix has to offer when we're making the remaster. We actually came together in part due to their help, and Nyle helping to bring us all to see the common vision we clearly have.
When we were looking at Half-Life 2 RTX, and it was clear that the community has tons of talent and an ability to really give us the Half-Life 2 that we remember, we just asked ourselves, what role can we play to help the community out? We don't see this as something Nvidia should do. We see this as something the community should do. We built Remix for modders. And frankly speaking, if modders are building incredible things that people want to play, Remix is doing what it's supposed to do. And so what we have come forward to do is to say, hey, you guys are all working on Half-Life 2 projects independently. Here's a framework for you guys all to unite, build it together, build it better, build it bigger, and actually do and deliver the thing that we all want to play. And I think that that's what you guys have done so far, and it's been amazing to see it and to help out where we can.
I can't understate NVIDIA's help either. NVIDIA's providing a ton of engineering support for Remix. It is Remix early access, which means there's bugs to be sorted out, there's features that need to be added, parallax occlusion mapping being one of those that David mentioned earlier. And without their assistance, it wouldn't be possible to hit the bar that we're hitting. That being said, we are the ones making the game. They're helping build the tool. We're giving them the feedback they need to build the tool, Remix, but we are the ones responsible for the game itself. If anything, they're here for logistical support and then for marketing. It also helps. They did us a huge favor by allowing us to be part of their Gamescom presence there. And I can't understate how much that helped us out.
All we had to do was give Orbital Studios early access to Remix and provide a little support, and they've been on their way.
That's right. And the Remix support has very much been a very supportive relationship on both sides. On the one hand, it's enabled us to make this remaster. We've had path tracing, which of course introduces fantastic lighting throughout. But in the meantime, we're also providing feedback to Nvidia that is actively shaping and enhancing the tool, not only for Half-Life 2 RTX, but beyond the project into whatever people may make next. That includes direct engineering support, not only in helping us get to grips with Remix, but feature suggestions like, for example, parallax occlusion mapping was something that was not in the tool when the project started, but we stated we felt it would be relevant to the remaster. We also made a good case for why it would help future remasters of other games, and the engineers at Nvidia delivered, and now we have another solid tool in our feature set, and that will be one that's added to Remix throughout.
And on that note, a whole lot of the assets that were thrown into the engine now, the old engine just could not handle. Source 1 was just not going to handle a lot of the poly counts that we were throwing at it, the resolutions. Just to try to throw a model in that, the engine wouldn't be able to take it. The PBR as well. Source 1 is a diffuse engine, as engines were in 2004. Moving to whole PBR, that means we have all sorts of new possibilities.
Some of the Lightspeed Studios artists have been working with us, mentoring some of our artists, teaching us the finer points of working with this new PBR path traced workflow, and making some example assets that we can deconstruct.
So I got a question here from Christoph YT, and they're asking, why are you making this?
Half-Life 2 has been a formative game for many, right? It's got an incredibly detailed and expansive world. It's the sequel to one of already the most famous games of all time, Half-Life. It's famous not only for its world and its execution, but it's also really famous for its modding scene, right? The amount of hobbyists who've been able to come into this and develop their skills and only tell their own tales within Half-Life 2's world, but then also create total conversions and expand and create their own worlds out of that formula. In returning to Half-Life 2 with a remaster, I'm hoping not only that we can bring new people in to see this world with whole new eyes, but also to inspire a new generation of creators in the same way as Half-Life 2 did when it first came out.
Half-Life 2 for me was always a game that was about raising the bar, wink wink. Half-Life 2 when it came out was a physics sandbox with awesome facial animations. It had all sorts of new, awesome, cool stuff. And that's what I remember it for. Being able to remaster Half-Life 2 and not only bring it up to a more modern AAA standard, but also really push the technology bar with path tracing is something incredibly exciting for me. To me, it sounds like the sky's the limit.
This is something I've actually really wanted to do for years, but we've never had, a team of people big and talented enough to actually pull it off until now.
It's so much more in reach now, basically.
Exactly, yeah. It was always a pipe dream, It's like, I'd love to do this, but you'd need a whole team of really talented people all working together to pull it off. And
many facets and stuff.
Yeah, it's a big job.
For us at Nvidia, we also, know how passionate everyone is about Half-Life 2. 2004 is one of the greatest years in gaming, in part because Half-Life 2 came out in it. We're all big Source fans. We did Portal RTX, and it was natural for us, and it was in line with our expectations that we looked online and everyone was like, when is Half-Life 2, And so I think for us, we really wanted to see something like a Half-Life 2 RTX happen, and it was on us to just figure out okay, why hasn't it happened already? And so we looked around, and we knew that there were incredibly talented people in the Source modding community, like the folks on this call, and yet when you look at the landscape of Half-Life 2 remasters, there's not many, if any, that go end-to-end with this fidelity level and this level of quality in the way that there is, for example, for Half-Life 1 and Black Mesa. And so we reached out to these folks, and we started asking them, why is it that they think they haven't been able to see a community remaster of Half-Life 2 from end to end? And what struck me is that everyone's tackled this problem from different angles. Chris with Project 17, WormSlayer has done an end-to-end remaster with primarily the VR use case in mind. Kralich is re-envisioning Half-Life 2 from a completely different perspective. But the reason why an end-to-end hasn't been done is because I think the technology and the manpower made it difficult to do it all. And I think what Remix did, and I would love to hear what these guys have to say about it, is how basically when you add in path tracing, the entire game's going to look dramatically different and improved. And to help the path tracing, you're going to have to revisit every asset and get the materials right so that they react with light realistically. And I think just having those two things enabled by Remix suddenly made it possible for a large team to get an end-to-end remaster made of Half-Life 2, making it look like the way we imagined it.
We don't want to come back and come through all of Half-Life 2 and just one-to-one this is a geometry with 4K textures, this is a geometry with a couple more polygons or something. We want to come through and make this the thing that you remember it being in your head from, with full nostalgia goggles. It was awesome, new technology. We want you to come through Half-Life 2 and feel the way you did when you felt it the first time. I think that's what all of us want to see out of this project.
So the next question is from @ZMax1Moose744, and they're asking, does Valve have any involvement in this remake?
We at Nvidia have a really good relationship with Valve. Portal RTX was made entirely hand in hand, very collaborative process with them. And so it was pretty easy for us to tell Valve, hey, there's some incredible modders here that you've got to meet. And we introduced these guys to them.
Valve have given their blessing for the project to go ahead and have been answering queries from us that are very encouraging for the future of the project. They're not providing direct oversight. This project is still and always will be 100% modder-led. And Valve are not taking an active role in the development of Half-Life 2 RTX, but we are keeping them in the loop and have been very excited to have this chance to talk with them.
The next question I got on my list is from one Lucia, and they're asking, will it be possible to play mods with this?
Similarly to how many Portal mods can be plugged into Portal RTX and pick up the replacements right away, as well as the new remix runtime and all the lovely lighting that entails, we expect you'll be able to plug a lot of Half-Life 2 mods from yesteryear into Half-Life 2 RTX and get similar results. Obviously, this will work best with vanilla-adjacent Half-Life 2 mods since most of the assets we replaced right out the gate. Mods that have custom assets, obviously you'll have to re-RTX the custom assets, but with the strong foundation of Half-Life 2 RTX and the really great tool, you'll just be doing the same we've been doing and making your own RTX mods. Meanwhile, obviously, compatibility patches have been a staple of the modding scene for many years, and I'm sure those aren't going away anytime soon. And we'd actually also love to see actively developed mods maybe pivoting a bit to support RTX as part of their development process.
Yeah, and I would just say, as David pointed out, we designed Remix this way. We want you to be able to use Remix with a ton of different mods. We want you to be able to remaster a game and then easily be able to remaster every mod for that game to also work with path tracing and the assets and the modern updated lighting. So yeah, we think Remix is a great way to not just re-experience classic games, but everything the mod community has built up till now.
Our next question is from Tabahara. Will the episodes receive the same treatment?
Many of us really want to remake both the episodes using RTX Remix, but those would have to be separate projects that we produce after we finish the main game. Obviously, Episode 1 reuses a lot of content that's just in Half-Life 2 that we're going to be remastering already, so that would be pretty easy to just plug in with Remix, whereas Episode 2 would require a bunch of additional work to remaster the various new assets that are introduced in that chapter.
So our next question is from @SnoiperBP9VF, and their question is, what is the process of remaking the textures?
So first off, we start by carefully referencing the original game's textures, looking at it both in context and where it shows up, and then looking for similar types of materials in real life. From there, the texture is recreated faithfully, by hand, by one of our very skilled artists, with added detail where it makes sense for the material, with PBR and in 4K, thanks to RTX Remix. Some textures with a unified and very specific art style, like for example a lot of the combined props and world materials, have received in-house art design docs to make sure they're unified across the board.
To build off of the design doc mentioned, a lot of what we're doing here, going back to what I said about wanting to recreate the feeling of the first time playing this again, we're going back and referencing, for example, for the Combine design document, going back and referencing Victor Antonov's original works to see what were the design notes that we wanted to hit with this.
Yeah, Victor Antonov is the art director for Half-Life 2, by the way, for people who don't know.
Yes. Victor Antonov, very talented artist, art director for Half-Life 2, Dishonored, probably a bunch of other stuff. We are going all the way back and referencing his art to see what we want to do with, say, the Combine design document. Not only are we just doing that for the Combine design, but just about all the other design languages through the game we're referencing so that our artists can come in here, make sure we're all hitting the design notes that we want to hit, because we know Half-Life 2 has some very specific visual design cues.
Our next question is from Jarmston, and they're asking, how will the human characters, Citizens, Kleiner, Alex, etc., be remastered?
So much like the materials, we're going back and referencing the very original face models for these characters. Of course, taking into account how they ended up in Half-Life 2 originally as well. Grigori, all the main characters are getting touched up. They're getting remade to actually look modern, new textures, everything. All based off of the original reference and the original characters.
Meanwhile, we've actually been able to handle a lot of the character and animated model replacements through RTX Remix. These kinds of things are called skinned assets in the context of the tool, which makes it more efficient than doing it source engine side as it was in Portal RTX, but we are still able to maximize the fidelity. The knock-on effect for other RTX mods is that for games that don't have good reverse-engineered model and animation formats like Half-Life 2 does, it will still be possible to remaster characters and animated models to a higher level of fidelity.
All right, so the next question is from Sitkinator, and they're asking, how will you deal with the player model since there is reflections and shadows that could expose the ugly Cement Gordon?
For those that don't know, in Half-Life 2, there isn't really a player model for Gordon. Like, you never see it, you just see his arms in front of the screen holding the guns. I mean, I've gone through and enabled the ugly Cement Gordon model, and it does have a noticeable impact in some scenes. You know, you're like, wow, there's, you know, the silhouette of Gordon as the light shines through the doorway behind him. So we are exploring some options for implementing a player model for reflections and shadows, but we haven't quite figured out how to do that satisfyingly yet. It's something we'd like to do, but unsure if we'll actually be able to pull it off yet.
Yeah, and this is one of those places where there's going to be tons of technical things we have to figure out with any mod when you start bringing it into a path-traced environment. This is just one of those, and we're here to look into options with you guys and see if there's something that can be done on this front.
So I got a question from Matija Jovic 8125, and they're asking, how will you deal with the optimization since Portal Remastered had problems with it?
So I think it's appropriate here to talk a little bit about my experience with Portal Prelude, which is obviously the predecessor RTX mod to Half-Life 2 RTX.
Right.
We communicated with Nvidia very regularly, me and Nicola, the two who were making Prelude RTX, about technical issues we were facing and optimization as well. Prelude's levels are way bigger than the original Portals. The chambers are more complicated. We have significantly more difficult levels in there to render. And so there was obviously a bit of an optimization problem to solve. Over the course of Prelude's development, I think that problem was addressed, and Prelude launched, and it launched very stable. So despite having bigger levels that were more complicated with more geometry and more unique assets, Portal Prelude runs pretty smoothly. We provided a great set of recommended specs as well in a great table with launch, which I think also helped people engage with the product. And I expect we'll have some of those benefits and more that we've yet to discover in Half-Life 2 RTX.
Yeah, and I think, you know, David's right. Like, there's always room for more and more optimizations, but I do think people need to also understand what it is that they're making with Remix. Path tracing is what gets used in modern Hollywood movies and CGI. It is the holy grail of lighting, and they're spending minutes to generate every frame path traced. With Remix, you have access to a real-time path tracer. It doesn't generate frames in minutes. It generates frames per second. So it's kind of incredible the power that you're playing with. And I think the Orbifold Studios team would agree that creating is so much easier when light just behaves like light's supposed to behave. You can make better looking things, and it's easier to make that stuff. And so, you know, what I would say is path tracing is the graphical cutting edge. And by the time Half-Life 2 RTX comes out, you know, DLSS keeps getting better every month. There's always updates that we find that helps improve performance on the software side or in the content itself, and we'll be working closely with Orbifold Studios to find that. But I think what people will be really happy with the balance they get when Half-Life 2 RTX comes out, with how visually jaw-dropping it is and what they can run it on.
So we got another question here from Naptown Jones, and they're asking, how hard is it to stay faithful to the original art direction when Half-Life 2 makes such awesome use of baked lighting already?
So I think the best way to answer this one is to break down a little bit what Remix does to the base game's lighting when you put it in. So the first thing that RTX Remix does is it kind of interprets all the lights that are already in the scene, and then it converts them into path trace lights. So a good example is actually Portal Prelude. For Portal Prelude, we did minimal lighting adjustments. A lot of the lighting you see is as Remix interpreted it from the original mod. Half-Life 2, a very well-lit game in a lot of places, means that in a lot of places in Remix, it's already well-lit. It interprets the lighting very faithfully. From there, we can make more alterations using Remix. We can modify some values here and there. We can add some extra lights in Remix here and there where it makes sense. Remix allows you to add different types of lights than just the static point lights that Source has access to, which also enables us to make these scene profiles a little bit more realistic. Kleiner's Lab, for example, has become very faithful to the originals, touched up in all the right places.
I really like what you guys did with Kleiner's Lab. When I look at it, you know, it's like very recognizable. It looks like that game as I remembered it. And at the same time, it's got this feeling of, like, I've seen it side by side with the original, and it just has this feeling of depth to it, where everything looks real. The way, like the subtle ways the light bounces into small crevices in the room, it just looks real. And I think you guys have done a really good job, like, keeping that original vision where it's unmistakably that game. It's an unmistakably Half-Life 2.
Like there are a lot of places where you have to resort to tricks to try and make the lighting look realistic with the old engine. So there are lots of like fill lights and stuff that have been put in just to kind of pad out areas that we can actually get rid of because RTX is just lighting them properly, accurately, realistically.
Our next question is from Vortigaunt. Will any of the Half-Life Alyx models be reused for this project?
Short answer, yes. Valve have spent considerable time and effort remastering lots of the original Half-Life assets, literally one-to-one, and using them in Half-Life Alyx, and it'd be a no-brainer to use them, really. You know, why reinvent the wheel?
So I got another question here from Sir Piglin, and they're asking, will the remastering of the game's assets be the same thing as the Remade Assets Project, or are they two different things?
Okay, no, they are two completely different projects. Half-Life 2 RTX and Half-Life 2 Remade Assets are separate from each other. Half-Life 2 RTX can be best thought of as the natural evolution of Half-Life 2 Remade Assets. It's worth saying that Project 17 is its own project as well, which is continuing development, but Half-Life 2 Remade Assets is being rolled into Half-Life 2 RTX. We are still planning on releasing these assets to the community after release of Half-Life 2 RTX, depending upon how we want to logistically do that. But Half-Life 2 Remade Assets as a team can be best thought of as being fully committed to Half-Life 2 RTX.
At the Dingster7655 asks, what is the biggest obstacle when developing RTX mods for games?
Remastering old games has kind of always been quite challenging for mods. Ultimately, you're often hamstrung by whatever tech that engine had. There's only so much you can do. And if you want to do stuff like putting, for example, modern techniques like PBR and better lighting into older engines, you often have to make a lot of sacrifices to make that happen. The implementation may not be optimized, the end result may not even look that good. RTX Remix handles a lot of the toughest work for you by, introducing these modern graphical techniques into these older games in a more optimized way. And so really the biggest challenge is not really anything to do with RTX Remix. It's more like just, well, if you're going to remaster a whole game, you need a whole bunch of modelers and a decent team to do it. But that's really the same for any mod. Any mod of this scale or even a similar scale is a Herculean effort. But it's been done, It's been done before by teams with enough passion. And so I'm confident that teams with passion will grow and for RTX Remix as well and produce mods using the tool.
So the next question that I got for you guys is from @Nightwolf1363, and they're asking, what do you think is the most interesting part of the game that was the most fun to return to in terms of remastering it?
Me personally, I'm looking especially forward to Black Mesa East, because Kleiner's Lab proved how interesting we can make a really intimate lived-in environment like that look with RTX and path tracing, with all the assets coming together, all the emissive masks, everything really produces a really lovely scene. And Black Mesa East is another area that's very similar to Kleiner's lab. So once all the assets are in and everything, I think it will look absolutely stellar.
Me personally, I know it's an easy answer, kind of low-hanging fruit, but I'm most looking forward to Ravenholm. There's a lot of opportunity there for path tracing to really shine with all the fire traps and all the really sharp dynamic lighting. It is going to be by far my favorite part to touch up, and I'm so excited to finally be able to show what we're doing there.
Yeah, honestly, I'm pretty excited for that chapter 2. Probably just most excited for that one, I guess, because that's really gives you the most opportunities to really do very interesting lighting. That's really where the RTX ray tracing, path tracing is going to shine.
I think so too. It's going to be great.
Obviously, I'm also keen to see Ravenholm. We've been working on some of that recently, and it's looking pretty cool. I was always a huge fan of the Combine architecture, and I'm really hyped to remaster the interior of the Citadel. I really love some of the design in there, and I think with some actual, real reflections and path tracing, it's going to look spectacular.
Yeah, lots of opportunities for shiny surfaces there.
Yeah, lots of big spaces with, volumetric shadows and things.
The next question I got right here is from @newscene1894, and they're asking, will it work for Half-Life 2 VR? I think that's a pretty interesting question as well.
So yeah, I mean, it's actually something I've dreamed about for a long time, making a path-traced VR game, but unfortunately RTX Remix and Half-Life 2 VR mod are incompatible in their current states. Having said that though, we are going to be backporting as much of the new content that's being generated in this project. It's going to be available, for everybody to use, so we're just going to be one of the people in the community benefiting from this glut of awesome content. But yeah, we're going to backport as much of that as we can into the old engine and release it as part of the Half-Life 2 VR mod graphics update, which is in production, ETA, who knows, sometime after we finish Remix.
I got a question here as well from Dog, and their question is, how many polygons is the Lamarr from the trailer? I'm actually kind of interested in that myself too, because it seems very high poly, so...
Yeah, well, I've got some fun numbers for you on this one.
I love numbers.
So Lamarr, a headcrab that is debeaked and completely harmless, is in Half-Life 2 RTX 49,668 polygons, compared to the original game's headcrab, which is 1,690 polygons. That's about 30 times the detail, more or less.
Oh my god, yeah, there you go.
So the added fidelity is really used to give Lamarr physical sculpting, where it was implied with textures or normal maps on the original model, all those little fat folds and weird little shapes that construct a headcrab, the almost turkey-looking thing. But that's our approach really to improving a lot of the other games' models. Another really big one in the trailer was, of course, the HEV suit, which is 95,000 polygons, an increase of about 4,000% compared to the original's 2,800 triangles.
My goodness.
So these are very detailed models and very efficient models rendered through Remix, which is very good at handling these kind of high poly things. It's not very difficult to put stuff like this into the game for it to render just fine.
All right, awesome. I can't wait to look at Lamarr's fat folds in the game.
I can't wait to play this game and just come up to every single object and inspect all the little details you guys put into them. I mean, it's truly unreal already. Like, getting so close to every little knob and switch on the servers in Kleiner's lab. It's just, and seeing like how little light switches are bouncing light on the rest of the switches. Like in the old game, it's a flat texture, and in the new game, every little piece interacts with every other piece. It's just so cool. I love to see it.
All right, so is there anything you guys would like to say before we end this? Is there anything you guys want to plug? Anything you guys want to really let the community know?
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope it's come through over the course of the interview that, like, this is a community-led project, right? It's 4 mod teams originally who came together to produce one massive mod. And since then, we've already taken on people from the community to help expand our team further. But we want to expand it more. This is for all the community. It is meant to be a new way to experience Half-Life 2. And we really want more people who are interested in this project, who think they have what it takes to support and to enhance what we can already do. We want them to apply. We want them to take part. We want to make this even more of a community's effort than it already is.
So where can they go to learn more about the mod and to keep up with updates?
Overfold Studios has our own website, which has the trailer that we put out, more information about the project and who we are, and also a link to join the team on a Google Forms. That's on HL2RTX.com.
All right, cool. And you guys have social media as well, I believe?
That's right. You can get a hold of us on Twitter at HL2RTX official, because that's us, the official one. And then over at landergeneration.com, you can get a hold of us at HL2RTX or post with the hashtag HL2RTX.
And that's it. Those were all the questions I asked that evening. I hope you all found it very informative, and we all certainly hope you got a little more excited for this community remaster. So, what do you think of Half-Life 2 RTX? Do you think it'll make it, or do you think it'll break it? Let me know in the comments. I always read all of them. Also, don't forget to like the video or to subscribe if you want to see more interesting Valve-related content every single week. Now, if you'd excuse me, I'm going to count all the polygons that Lamarr has by hand. I'm pretty sure Kralich wouldn't lie about the amount of polys, but I need something to do to wait for your comments to drip in.